This conference will now be recorded.
Scott, I'm ready to call the meeting to order. I call the August 12th, 2021 meeting of the Pelican Reserve Advisory Committee of the Gate Services Community Development District to order. Live with us today, 5 of our members: Teresa Phillips, Doug Zander, Glenn,
Glenn and Joe. Of course.
Jens Sikorsky. I'm drawing a blank.
Joe Schofield.
Joe Schofield, and on the phone we have John Grega and Randy Bottleson. Also note that we have as a visitor today our new Chief Operating Officer, Mary Peter Kraus. To allow Randy and John.
I'll second.
Moved by Teresa, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Passes 5-0. And okay. We'll go to the report.
Glenn Sikorsky. I just handed to you in July actual budget current fiscal year. We're on track. Scott provided it to me, so I gave you a copy. Sorry, I couldn't provide it to you earlier. And if we look at the actual net income of 128,000, this is for the fiscal year September, and we're already into July. So we're coming up near the end of our year. So everything looks in line. Scott and I through the different things. One thing I thought is mulch. We just improved the name of $12 for mulch. So I'd like to look into if there's alternatives. Put the way up per bale, etc. Does the members feel that's appropriate?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Take it away.
Thank you. I letter. Is there any questions on the June or July numbers? I know I gave it to you just now, but if it comes up, let me know. In turn, I gave you a letter that we did a couple of years ago to our residents, working with Phil in regards to informing our residents about the budget numbers. Obviously, they come from Gateway, through our property taxes, they come through our master association, and we're just trying to put in order here or inform them about our operating budget with Gateway Cdd. Now, I addressed 3 areas.
When if you don't mind, I'd like to hold having that letter.
Okay.
Because during some work in the last couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks, I guess, I've discovered that there are some things in the budget that we have not had a complete understanding. I take some of the my fault, some of the fault. Over the years, as I have laid out a couple of times, there are kind of 4 pieces to our budget. There's the O&M that you and Scott focus on.
Yep. Yes.
And what is called, if everybody would take that, have it, fiscal year operating budget, Pelican Reserve Fund 0.2. If you look at the second page, you will see that there are a couple of pieces. One of them is the ponds budget, or the what they call the waterway management services budget. Then there is the HOA agreement, which is the O&M budget. Miscellaneous collection fees are kind of a nil. There's reserve, the capital reserve, to which we have allocated funds over time in order to fund what we came up with on our reserve study. Now, in addition to that, there are amounts that are allocated to us, or at least by the CDD. And in the past, we have kind of said, well, these are overhead amounts. There isn't a hell of a lot we can do about them. We just kind of accept them. Well, it turns out that these amounts that we get from the CDD are pretty substantial, and they're going up very substantially in 2022 from 2021. Now, there are two basic parts to the CDD piece. One of them are administrative services and operational administrative services. Those two numbers, and there's a whole bunch of lines on all of them. You can see them there if you look at page 1 and 2. Those amounts are an allocation of the pot, if you will, that is created by the CDD, in which we receive 14%. 27% goes to the 001 account, and another 59% to the 400 account, which is the utility account. So we are allocated 14% of this big pot. And it's never been much of a problem before. Then we have the operating expenses, and that is money that is also put into our budget by the CDD, but that is those are specific amounts. That's not an allocated percentage. So we need to understand those, because it appears that those are the numbers that are driving up our expenses from 2021 to 2022. And if you look at the sheet I sent you, which says fiscal year 2022 account 002 budget, you'll see that our expenses have gone up $170,000, $173,667 to be exact. 100,000 of that is the capital reserve, and we'll get back to that. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to focus on the amounts that come down to us from the CDD. So I've asked Laura Leroy and Stephen Bloom to join the meeting so that we can start to get some explanations as to what the increases in these particular funds are. And Laura, I'd like to start with the amounts in administrative services and operational administrative services. And if I look at those, there are some big increases in particular places. One of them is the payroll market adjustment provision, which is a study of salaries. And can you introduce yourself and then give us an idea of what's in that account?
Sure. Laura Leroy, business manager. The payroll market adjustment provision, that $24,000, the board voted to put a pool of money into the budget this year to do market adjustments to staff salaries. It does not include Chris because his salary is dictated by contract, but I believe the overall pool was $150,000 to do market adjustments on salaries for staff. Mm-hmm. And so that would be your portion, your share of that $150,000. Correct. Doesn't mean it's going to stay at $150,000. That's just where it was when they put in, that's the initial amount they put into the approved budget. So that's where that amount came from.
Okay. And when might that change after they review the budget?
If they don't make any changes next week before they adopt it, that's where it'll stay. Mm-hmm. And as of now, they have not made any mention of changing that amount. Okay. The payroll salaries, the reason that went up quite a bit is there actually are two new positions in that, in the approved budget. One of them was for the assistant district manager, which I believe we put that in like 100,000. And then there was a new position that they added for the, basically like a parks and rec manager, like someone who would oversee the pool, the dog park, the soccer fields, all that. So there, that was $150,000 right there just for those two new positions. So that's where that came from. That would be your share of that.
Why would they share?
It's administrative. I don't know. That would be a Stephen question.
Stephen, are you with us? Hello?
Sorry, can you guys hear me? Yes, I am here, but the question, I did not hear the full question.
They're questioning why for the payroll salaries, I believe my answer was correct, that because we added those two new positions, the assistant district manager and then the parks and rec manager position, they were asking why Pelican would pay for that. The assistant DM I could see, but I don't know why they would pay for the parks and rec manager.
Yeah, no, that's the only piece, that one, there is a zero. I'm looking at the allocation page. The positions,
Assistant district manager.
yeah, it's really the assistant district manager. The other positions that are allocated, obviously, district manager, business manager, and receptionist. Oh, I'm sorry, and public works manager. And that's it.
But the increase would be because of that assistant district manager. We added that.
That's correct. The assistant district manager is the big piece of that, as absolutely.
Okay.
And that position is starting at 95. That's in the budget right now.
Okay. I knew it was around 100.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pull that particular sheet up.
Okay. Going on, Laura, to the reserve study.
Mm-hmm. The board added $50,000 in for a reserve study for the district, and so that would be your share. That doesn't mean, again, that will stay, but that was something that the board did add in when they did the adopted or the
What is
budget.
that for?
That would be to pay someone to come in and look at everything overall here and make a recommendation for what we should be putting aside every year into our reserve.
Which, we already did that, although I think it's coming up that we should be doing it again, because we did it about 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Is there a separate
Something we
reserve for
probably need to-
Pelican versus Gateway?
Yeah, you have your own in your
Yeah, we
O2
have-
Okay,
fund.
so the
Yeah,
50,000 is for our part.
it's for the Gateway Fund. It would be, the $50,000 is overall for all of Gateway, and that share, that's, what did you have there?
7,000.
7,000, that's your portion of it, of that. Since it's an administrative cost and you pay 14% of the administrative costs.
How about the computer equipment and software?
That one,
Would you introduce yourself, please? and
Yeah.
Stand up
Bob
there.
Geppert, a resident of Monticello. If we, PPAC, is not a part of the reserve study, they're independent and conducted their own in the past, funded in the past, and continue on that vein, we have no need of any administrative support over here on that item.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be paying.
Who is it who makes the decisions as to whether that should be in there?
I mean,
I understand why Gateway's doing it.
yeah.
All I'm questioning is, and Chris, maybe, you can jump in. Administratively, we PPAC doesn't rely on you. So we shouldn't be participating. We don't care what they do.
As far as that study.
Yeah, as far as the study, we recognize the need. That's why we've been doing it for years. But I have a tough time saying Pelican should be picking up the administrative burden of you guys starting something new.
Well, that's a solid argument.
One of the problems I ran into in looking at this thing was who makes the decisions as to which numbers go on in the budget? In other words, who will now determine whether that $7,000 is to be included or not to be included?
If it's an administrative cost, then classified under the district's budget as an administrative, and you're assessed 14% of that administrative,
Then you
there's
get it.
really no rule or include this, include that. As
Right.
Bob said, that's something new.
It's
So it hasn't been
automatic
addressed before.
Unless a situation or a comment comes up that says it should not pertain to, like Parks and Recs, are not burdened, that cost burden is not shared by Pelican.
Correct.
And under this particular one, I think a case can be made, and we can take it to the board. It just never was considered. glad you brought it up because that argument, we can take it to board.
Sure, I mean, generally, well, I should say, yeah, if there's any type of an administrative cost, because you share, 14% of our administrative cost, that's where that reserve study went under, was as an administrative cost, so that's why it was assigned
So that's the
to
automatic.
yours. Yeah,
It's automatic.
Yes, I understand that, and
Unless the
I,
exception is carved out.
that, yeah, I understand that, we get 7% or 14% of whatever's in
So in
there.
essence, anything they declare is administrative, we're putting
Well, it's
14.
not that declared, it's
Well,
whatever it is.
okay, in essence, 14% is what we contribute to all administrative costs. What we're saying is some of those administrative costs don't affect Pelican Preserve. Therefore, they should be eliminated from our portion.
Well, I don't know if I go that broadly, Joe, but yeah, but in this particular case, this particular item.
This would be one item that should be
this would an
eliminated.
item
Yeah.
you could
that
challenge,
case could be made
yep.
for exclusion.
And how do we go about the challenge?
Yeah, that's right.
Bob?
Send a note and I'll support it. Just take a position. Feedback has reviewed this.
Okay,
And we think
I-
we should be entitled to it.
okay, I would like to hold that because there are a couple of other things in here that I think we need to discuss.
Okay,
Um,
I know the next one on your list, I believe, was the computer equipment.
Right,
There was, we added an extra $10,000 into the budget this year to, the majority of that was to purchase laptops for the board. And we have some security hardware that we need to add on to our servers that we have here to help protect the SCADA systems, which monitor all those lift stations and everything because they're exposed to the outside. We need to install some security hardware. And there was some licensing for some software like the Procurify that I use for doing the purchase orders that was not included in last year's budget. That total just for that one license is $7,500.
Mhm.
So those are some things that got added into the budget this year that were not in the budget last year.
You know, those things I think are probably valid administrative costs.
Yeah. You got a
Yeah, I
laptop,
agree
right?
with that.
Yeah.
I use them a lot.
Yeah,
Right.
but I think those are valid administrative costs, so
Yep.
I wouldn't question that. Okay, so those were the major things in these allocated costs that I picked up. There are a lot of small things, there are a lot of little puts and takes, but basically those are the big numbers. Now we have two other lines, and those are part of, if you look at the operating expenses, they are the two major things in operating expenses. There's practically nothing else in there as far as increases are concerned. One of them is engineering fees, which is going from 8,000, and you should be looking in the far left hand or the adopted budget column, going from $8,000 to $12,000, a 50% increase. And then there is the attorney fees, going from 8,500 to 25,000, an almost tripling of the costs. And I've had difficulty figuring out who decides what number goes in there. Not only who, but how it is decided. In other words, who makes the decision as to putting in 12,000 and 25,000 into those two lines? And how is that decision arrived at? And I'm wondering whether Stephen or Laura can enlighten us on that.
Stephen and I actually discussed this yesterday afternoon, but I think he can explain it a little better than I
Okay.
can, so
Stephen,
I'll
can you-
defer to him.
Stephen,
Yes. Absolutely. So the 12,000 to 25,000 are kind of the base starting point that are put into the budget templates. And then the who is Danny and Tony in the past have been the ones that have contributed to whether or not those numbers need to be changed. I actually went back to, and I was talking to Laura about this, I went back to last year's file, and actually there was a note right there in the files that came back to me that said, you know, for engineering, and this was the 8,000 I'm referring to, that number was actually reduced from the original 12,000 that was in the template to 8 per Danny, a memo from Danny, I think it was dated April something. And then down below that, under the attorney's cost, again, it was changed per Tony. So the answer to your question, Phil, the base budget goes out with, you know, core amounts, kind of looking at the historical and kind of, you know, really just very base numbers. And then from there, it's usually, the engineer and the attorney that provide the information or recommendation, I guess, for lack of a better word, coming back as to whether or not to change it.
Well, I contacted Danny and he said he didn't have anything to do with that number.
Well, he might not even, I don't know that he even remembers that it was done based on one of his memos. But my guess is he put together a memo on what, he was expecting to do. And then from there, the numbers were probably calculated, right from what he was expecting. So he might not have been making the connection that what he had done in the memo was then used, as it should be used to put into the budget.
And Tony didn't respond to my request for information as to how that $25,000 came about. So I'm a little bit at a loss.
Is it still a 15% allocation?
No,
No,
this is
no,
just
now we're
No,
talking.
this is no.
These are
Straight-
services
this
that are
is straight
provided
stuff.
just
Straight
to
stuff.
Pelican.
Yep.
And a lot of times, Bob, I'll just use the thing like when we did the engineering fees for the aeration, or we did Tony for talking about the liability with the fires and stuff like that. A lot of times I don't think we think about it. It's not free.
Right, and that's where that
when
goes.
we end
That's
up
where those
paying
get
for it.
charged.
Or the golf cart when we went to the attorney, whenever we go to those
Although
people.
he's never answered, so I don't know how he can
But
charge
I
us
mean,
if he
what I'm saying though is I think we incur expenses and we don't think about it when we do it.
We got the access road, we got the boardwalk.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
things going on. We just never thought that.
We never look at it that way.
When you make the call, the cash register, it's something to do.
Right.
That's right.
Well,
Well,
it should be variable, it shouldn't be this high in the future.
But historically, haven't we spent that in those two areas a year?
I guess that's how they came up with the number, but I don't know that.
Laura, wasn't it in the ponds group, we overspent and we came back and took some money out of a line item in the ponds group to cover some of the engineering costs just recently?
Yeah,
Okay,
we've had to move a
what's-
few things around, yes, to cover some of those costs. Because I know like, there was actually an amendment to your 2021 budget. It started out at $8,000 and we added another $33,000 on it because of those projects that you weren't expecting to do when you made your budget for fiscal 21.
Okay.
So you actually have a $41,000 engineering budget for this year. So going from 41 down to 12 is actually technically a huge decrease compared over where it is this year. So I think you were looking at the adopted amount of $8,000, but there was an amendment which took it up to $41,000. And then we're looking at only 12 for fiscal 22. So it technically is going down, not up.
And on the legal side, what were we on that one?
Last year that was budgeted at 8,500.
And there weren't any extra charges on that one.
There were no amendments. So I guess that one Stephen, I don't have the page up in front of me that has where we're on trend for this year for their attorney fees.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up again. I want to see what the last set of financials, so
Yeah,
I can see if that projection needs to go up. I'm thinking that might be the answer, that the projection needs to go up. But you just give me, I should be able to pull this up real quickly and tell you kind of where you're at now with legal.
And I can pull it.
As a matter of interest, if you go back to administrative services, you will see that we are also allocated engineering fees and attorney fees. $5,180 worth of engineering fees and $6,300 worth of attorney fees. So that's part of the allocation. And then this is on top of the allocation.
True.
Yeah, that's correct. So, and in general, how this works is general district stuff, like Tony going to a meeting or something, meeting a board meeting, that general cost of his gets allocated across the three funds. And then if he's working on something specific to the fund, then that's what goes down in just the fund under the operating side.
It's the
So
same when the fee we get for them to attend the board meetings, that gets spread across everyone as well. I'm looking in my Procurify numbers, which may or may not tie right up with yours, Stephen, for engineering. In the operation one, not the shared admin side, I have About $19,500 so far this year that's been billed.
Yeah,
Just-
for engineering, and you're actually not very far off, but through June, I'm showing about, it's almost 21,000 in engineering. And attorney is up to about 16,000 just through June, which means you have one more quarter.
So the engineer, if I'm not mistaken, is $250 an hour and you earn $650 an hour?
Then, and no, actually,
I think
yeah,
they're
no,
reversed.
they're flipped. Actually, the rate that we have now that Danny doesn't do this stuff anymore is considerably less.
But the attorney is not cheap.
But the
Well,
engineers.
He has a set fee, I know, for
Tony
board
bills us
meetings.
at 150 an hour
Yeah.
for CDD.
Yeah,
Oh, it's $150 an hour?
and he has a set
The
fee for
engineering
attending
is
board
more
meetings.
expensive. I know that.
Well,
Well, the engineer was more expensive, but now that we have Stephen Agapi doing our stuff, he's way less. I think he's like $150 or $160 an hour
Almost
versus
equal to
Danny's
the
$250.
attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
it seems to me that the trends would indicate that the two numbers that have been given to us, which is the 12,000 for the engineering and
The 25 for the,
25,000 for the attorney fees,
are not really out of line.
may not be way out of line.
Correct.
Is how much is the impact? Is there an impact of the fact that we're moving stuff over to the CDD, like bidding some of these contracts? Does that have an impact on either of these?
Well, when the engineer bills us for preparing those bills, it gets charged to Pelican because they did the work for you. So there's really no impact. It still would go against that line item. Whether you hire them to do it and the invoice goes directly to the PPAC, or if the invoice comes to the CDD, it still gets charged against that same GL. So there's really it doesn't matter.
Okay. So it appears to me, but I certainly am open to comments here, that probably the only one of these, and we'll get to the capital reserve. Again, the only one of these that we have a real question about is the reserve study.
Okay,
Yeah.
And that,
that'll be up to you.
If I may, because I had one that was relatively new to us, and that's the $77,862 for the O&M agreement. That is just a plus to
Oh,
the
yes.
PPAC budget.
yeah,
And it was a transfer from the Community Association.
but but was already in the 2021 budget.
Correct, but
And
it
so
went through
it's-
in 21,
Yeah.
and it's carrying over into 22. But I'm suggesting you may want to revisit that, because that's a lot of money that PPAC is paying for castle services for basically two things, unless there's more that I'm not aware of, landscaping and security. Now, it would be landscaping, security, and ponds, except that we have a work group that handles the ponds portion and totally manages that for the community. And I would suggest that we did the same thing for safety. The safety and security right now is pretty stable. You know, it's just ongoing. Maybe we could consider creating a work group that would manage that at no cost to the residents moving in the future. And then maybe even at some future time, landscaping, although I don't know enough about it. But all I'm saying is there is an opportunity for us.
I agree. And the safety and security work group we've got that on our agenda to look at that. But I think as
We can knock 77,000 out and no, I don't know that we need council. I mean, PPAC is self-sufficient.
it turns out the number is actually 93,000.
Okay.
At this point, you know, I think our concern is to explain why people's fees are going up 5.4% for multifamily and 6.4% for single family. And this little thing that I prepared is an attempt to get to those explanations as to explain why it's happening. I would draw your attention down to the O&M agreement or HOA agreement line on the second page. And Glenn and Scott, when you did this, you came up with a number that's $100,000 less than the budgeted amount for 2021. You came up with $1,420,294, and that was because of the of a credit for amounts put into the
taken out of the capital reserve. However, on the official budget line, that amount was actually taken out of the reserve. So the HOA agreement number is at $1,520,000, not $1,420,000. And if you then go over to the right and see that for 2022, the HOA agreement number is $1,475,000, it actually declined by $44,000. Now, that $44,000 is the amount that was moved from the HOA agreement into the ponds budget,
Yeah, and the line item just above it.
the line item just above it. So those two cancel each other out effectively. We're not spending any more money. We're just spending money. We're just taking money from the O&M or the HOA agreement budget and putting it into the ponds budget.
Is the HOA agreement the owner, the release balance?
Yeah, yes, it's the O&M. It's the O&M. Correct. So the big increase, the significant increase is that we're going from 265,000 charged to the capital reserve to 365,000. That's where that $100,000 comes in. So that is a big piece of the increase, obviously. It's 100 of the 170. So we are that. So the explanation of why our fees have gone up is quite different than was in that letter. That's the point I'm getting.
Sure.
That the fees for the HOA agreement actually have not gone up. And the expenses have gone up primarily because of these things that I tried to capture that are the capital reserve account, as well as these overhead items and the items charged directly to Pelican Preserve. So in terms of explaining to our constituency why things went up, I think that's the explanation, not that things changed that drastically in the O&M budget. But I'm open to comment on that.
Well, before Bob, we have our new COO here, Gary. In your experience, and Phil and I differ in a way on this, that you can give a lot of detail to residents. You know, we could give them every line item of this budget, and there's going to be people that won't even read it. So I always say we give them the highlights,
Yeah.
or the KISS principle.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid. Seriously. But in your experience in other associations, what do when they have these budgets that there's increases? Obviously, everyone.
Well, I mean, Gary, if you would.
Yeah.
You and I don't.
No, okay.
Piotrowski, Reserve, meet everybody. First time in one of these meetings, but yeah, it's usually a summary budget and then some variance report on key items. Because if you're gonna have an increase, people are gonna kind of want to know generally where they came from. Kind of like what Mr. Mezzi's saying, it's coming from capital reserve, the majority of it. So there's gonna be a question, but I agree with as far as what you provide the residents, a summary. I think we do a little bit more on the HOA side and the town center. You know, we provide the P&L, but I think people, want to see the summary, but there's got to be an explanation of variances.
Very good.
Thanks,
Okay.
Yeah, and Glenn, you and I agree on that. By the way, I think we have.
But Bob.
Yeah, I had one comment. It was a question, really.
Yes.
Was our old standard for capital reserve 365, and we took 100,000 out last year?
That's correct.
So in other words, we deferred last year's increase.
Right.
So this year's really almost 2 years increase.
Yeah.
Because it's not a good thing to take the reserves when, whatever, personal opinion. Secondly, I think it's gonna be very important to explain to our residents what this capital reserve is versus what they're paying to the HOA. We've got to make that crystal clear that, these are two separate independent organizations looking for separate and independent reserves for capital assets. They're not overlapping.
You mean what you said HOA, but you meant CDD, right?
No. PPCA.
Yes.
They also have reserves.
Yeah, that's correct.
Their reserves are totally different
Totally
than ours.
different. Have nothing to do with it.
And all I'm saying is it's a real opportunity. It occurs to me as I'm sitting here listening as a resident now. Well, wait a minute, why is PPAC putting reserves aside when I'm paying reserves to PPCA? So in whatever the letter you generate, you might want to at least put a blip in there about what the difference is in the reserves. These reserves are for A, B, and C. Their reserves for F, Y, and G. That might.
I also feel that we have an opportunity here. You know, a lot of people are concerned. They have seen that the CDD's expenses are going up by 100% or more. Huge numbers. We've heard a lot about that. And I think that we have an opportunity here to say that one of the reasons that's happened to the CDD gateway, but not to Pelican Preserve, is that over the years, we have done a pretty good job of funding our reserves and taking care of those things that needed to be done. What's happening in Gateway is that years of neglect, frankly, is catching up with them. And so they're having to put forth a lot of money, or we'll probably have to put forth a lot of money because they don't have the reserves and they haven't done the work they should have been doing in the last 25 or 30 years. So I think that's, you know, that flavor needs to come through as well, that we have been careful in putting money aside. Even Stewart.
I have two comments to make. At the president's meeting this morning, there was some confusion on some of the, on the part of some of the presidents, and it always amazes me that men or women in that position don't understand the political structure of Pelican Preserve. And PPAC and PPCA are confused. And there was a gentleman today that was just totally confused on reserves. He kept thinking one was a PPAC reserve when it was a PPCA reserve. Now, I don't know how we ever get people to understand that difference. And I think that's critical for our community to understand they're two different entities. I think the other issue is the gateway increases. I think the CDD has gone to great lengths to try to communicate, and Bob, you're part of that effort, communicate to the residents that when they put a budget together, they went to everything they had that needed to be addressed so that the residents had a clear understanding of just how far back they are and how much is required to be spent to correct all the issues. But it's never been, in my opinion, the intent of that board to do all that in 1 year and put all that in a budget. The goal was to make people aware. And now, in the last meeting I was at, they worked very hard to start reducing that thing. So it's not going to be 100% or 106% increase. It's going to be, I think, a lot less than that if I've heard what I think the CDD has been telling the residents. Bob, you could expand on that, but I think we want to be careful before we say they're going to 100% or 106%.
Oh, I don't think we'd say that. Oh, no, I don't think.
It's going to be high.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
But don't misunderstand the reduction in the percent increase with a reduction in the scale of the work that's been done. Instead of putting it on non-ad valorem, the board has determined we are going to buy bonds or loans and pay them back over 20 years rather than 1 year. The work is still going to be done. The money is still going to be spent. But it's going to be funded a little bit. And that's a layman's summary of where we're going.
And even with that, the percentage increase in the fees is still going to be pretty substantial.
Close to 20%, I don't know. It's still a good number. Somewhere between 10 and 20.
More than we want to pay. We won't, but more than they do. Yeah.
So Joe, I agree with you that part of that explanation ought to be, you know, whatever we send out, explain this to people. We ought to make sure that we differentiate between PPCA and, you know, that people understand that what PPAC is and what the CDD is, and that is for capital expenditures for infrastructure.
A lot of people.
Mike Lanfear from Pelican Reserve Plaza neighborhood. I'd like to address Joe's comment. As I looked around, I co-chair the President's Council. I have for the last 4 or 5 years. And as I looked around the council today, And they didn't do a roll call today. Wasn't my meeting, it was Bob's. We take turns. I noticed a lot of new faces in the presidents. Okay. And I would think that it would be an excellent idea to maybe have a presentation to the President's Council at the next, explaining how these various entities work. And just as an education, because I didn't recognize, I'd say half of the people in there, and I've been doing this for a long time.
Historically, that has happened with the
Residents Alliance. Historically, we have given a PPAC report at the Residents Alliance.
And ponds and everything.
And ponds and everything, so that's differentiated. But Mike,
Exactly right.
I think your idea is a good one.
About the interaction between the various,
Yeah.
how they play.
Yeah, I think it's good because you have a captured audience, and who goes to the Residents Alliance means lots of people, but not every president. If you have the presidents there, they're going to be focused on it, and we'll hit the right people that can communicate to their residents what it is. The clear understanding to me, I see so many people blaming somebody for something that had nothing to do with it, and it's unfortunate.
One of the things that I'm doing as a board member is to try and get an organization within Gateway of Presidents Association comparable to what Pelican has. Because it's an excellent means of communicating down to the HOAs what's going on and for them to program. So that is just taking off now. But we hope to make it as robust as the Pelican. And Pelican presidents are invited to, and they're coming.
I would like to, just suggest, if a representative from the PPAC and a representative from the board, if you want to sit down and attend an agenda meeting with us prior to the meeting, and maybe we can come up with a little plan. We usually do our agenda meetings the Tuesday before the Thursday meeting at about 10 o'clock in the morning over at the old Welcome Center, which is now the Community Center. Okay. So, because quite frankly, when we put out the email, or Chris Santos puts it out, and we ask for agenda topics and things that are people concerned, we usually get nothing. Okay. So we sit there, but I think a presentation would be great and explain this to these, especially to these other presidents who don't understand this whole system, how it works. It is very confusing to a lot of people. Half the people don't understand what the Gateway Services does. When you tell them that they manage the roads and they own the roads in Pelican Preserve, people are astounded, but the presidents, when you explain it to the presidents, because they're the ones that have the direct communication to their communities. So people are talking all the time and they're always asking questions, and that's what they, thanks.
Well,
It'd be good for the Phil and Phil show.
in the meantime, though, we have to put this letter out within a time frame of.
Yeah.
Okay, so I suggest that Phil, you and I'll work on tweaking the draft letter I started and put in about the reserves, and then we'll run it past our other board members, and we'll get that. And again, we want that to go sooner than later, right?
Yeah, we need to be a little careful in light of the sunshine laws as to how we do that, but yes.
Well, we're working on draft.
Yeah.
So do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I will start working on that, and
Yeah, well, I think you've already got the skeleton
no, I do.
in the earlier letter.
Yep.
It's a matter of putting in
Now,
what the different reasons are.
okay. All right.
I would think.
Very good.
So I think we should go forward with that. We have the one question about the $7,000.
The reserve study.
Reserve study. I assume Chris can carry that to the.
Laura, would you make sure they have people with that?
And Joe, I agree with you. There are so many people that don't understand the difference, and this is probably too simplistic. But when somebody asks me what the difference is, I just tell them that PPAC deals with your taxes and PPCA deals with your HOA fees or your town center fees.
Mike, I have the skeleton of the presentations that I have given to the
We can include it.
Residents Alliance explaining what PPAC is. So I'd be glad to sit down with you guys and come up with a presentation.
I'm welcome.
Okay. Okay.
Want to ask Chris, he's back.
I assume.
Lori,
Yeah, Laura.
Oh, sorry.
Any further discussion on the budget?
I just wanted to ask Chris, when you're back, how's Securitas with the contract coming?
They had the pre-bid
Bid-
meeting this
Morning
morning.
at 11 o'clock. We had a pre-bid meeting.
Okay, so it's on its way.
It's on its way and the bids will be opened on September 3rd. Correct. So we are on our way with it, and it looks like we've got 3 companies. Yes. Bidding on the contract.
question, Chris, because we maybe do more bidding. You know, I like when we did the one with Al and one of the persons from the Ponds Group, Al's Liquor. That, we don't get charged a fee for that. That's part of the payroll, which is the 14% overhead. Whereas with the boardwalk, where we went out and did an outside engineering firm, that would be a separate, when we did a bid that way, that would be a separate line item because there's additional expenses for the engineering firm.
There would be the engineering side of it, you know, when you hire an engineer, but
Right.
that procurement, which is the bid specifications, and typically what happens is the engineer puts in his technical specs and his plans.
Right.
The front end of the document and the contract is standard CDD.
Yeah. But there is some, whereas if all the work is done on your team,
Right.
there is no additional expense. It's just some 14% payroll overhead. Whereas if we have to go outside to get someone, we pay for that fee.
Yeah, and if, regardless, it was Tetra Tech as a district engineer or
someone
another
else.
engineer you selected, you would
We pay for the additional expense. Okay.
We'll get some cost benefit.
Well, you better get more than what it costs.
Okay. All right, time to move on. 2022 meeting schedule. I believe that, find it, that Georgia provided it in your package.
Agenda?
No, it's not the
Yeah, but
agenda.
I thought I seen it.
I saw
There
it
is
in the-
there is a definitely.
It's in here somewhere.
It's in here, so,
There you go. There you go.
yeah. Everybody should have this thing. It's,
Yeah. Sure, someone.
What did he show?
so I,
Showed some dates of the Met
Oh,
schedule.
yeah.
now
I got it.
I'm assuming all of those dates, and I must admit, I didn't check them out,
Green.
but I'm assuming all of those dates are second Thursdays of each month, except for the one that's marked as a change.
Veterans Day is different.
Because of Veterans Day. Are people comfortable with 2:00, second Thursday as a meeting time? I mean, I think that's the overall question. I think that's the basic question. Do we think is that a good time for us to be having our meetings?
I think it's a very good time, and I think since we're a 55-plus community with most of them retired, it doesn't put a hardship on residents that want to come to a meeting. So I think it's good.
Other comments?
I have no problem with it.
I think if we changed it, we'd show up on the wrong day at the wrong time.
Well, that's,
Okay,
More of a legal requirement document.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
You can still change anything.
Oh, and we
We
do,
have.
usually when you guys kick us.
Yeah,
out of
when
the
you
room.
CDD
It's
causes.
your fault.
Uh-huh.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not sure that we actually need a motion unless we just need consensus of the committee that the schedule looks like one that we're going to adopt.
It's good.
It's
Okay?
good.
All right. Okay, approve the minutes for June 15th and July 8th. Lisa, I will have to compliment you. They're nice and clean.
Thank you.
I didn't personally see any problems with them. How about anybody else?
No.
If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the June 15th meeting.
I'll make the motion. Go ahead.
Second it.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Randy, everybody else?
Oh,
Seven to naught. July 8th meeting. Motion to approve the minutes of the July 8th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 8th meeting.
Okay, we have a second.
Bueno, second.
Second.
Glenn can second.
No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we got every seven to none. Okay. Security.
Scott Charnock, property manager, Pelican Preserve. As was mentioned earlier, the bid process has started. We had our pre-bid meeting today. Was mentioned that the contract will be put out to bid to 3 different companies, Securitas being one of them. So I will update you as I get further along in the process. But we had a brief meeting today with all 3 vendors.
The schedule would, if we open the bids on September 3rd, the schedule would be to have us approve the choice of the vendor at our first meeting in September. And then
Yes.
on the 16th of September, the board would ratify what we approved.
And just to clarify, that will be with Gateway
That will be with Gateway.
Yes.
contract.
Yeah, that's why we're going through this bid process.
Very good.
Yes.
So we will save the sales tax.
That's correct.
One comment, be back to them. Stony Brook just redid theirs. Fellow by the name of Joe McCaucus, who's their HOA president, I believe.
Yes, yes.
And I would suggest whoever is doing it for us, Mike, is there a comparable people who dates, just to see what they do. And the prices are the same.
What community?
Stony Brook.
Stony Brook.
Did it reduce their cost?
I already told you.
Thank you for going.
Well, they just did it, you may want to share, some of their history back.
Al, were you involved at all with Stony Brook in there?
Good afternoon, Elle Harris, Gateway Services. I was not involved in the bidding process or the agreement for Stony Brook Security.
Okay, thank you.
Their master association issued the RFPs and got the proposals back in, and then they ranked it and then brought that to the board.
Okay.
And I have a contract listing and a scope of work if you'd like to see it.
Any further comments, suggestions? Okay. Palazzo Road transfer. Joe, do you want to give us a little?
Well, I'd say we're well underway. The CDD has approved the engineering task authorization. They also had a fellow come out and look at the road condition, the same fellow that's doing all the roads in Pelican Preserve right now. Mike informed me that they have issued the order to the Tetra Tech Engineering to do the study. Mike, I'm not sure about the survey. Are they going to do that for you also?
I don't know that.
Okay, okay.
They don't normally do.
Yeah, okay.
It goes to the third one.
Well, we asked them at the CDD meeting and they indicated they could work on it. Whether they would do it or not, I don't know. Anyhow, the CDD requested a survey be done of the property. One clarification I have is the landscaping. I thought it was included, but I've been told it's not included. So the landscaping is going to be under your jurisdiction still.
We're not asking for landscaping.
Okay. So we're moving forward. Well, my comments with Mike were, we'll wait for the engineering study, then bring it back to the board. We can look at the engineering, we can look at the road report that we have, and then we can make a motion and move it on to the CDD, hopefully for approval. I think that's where we are at this point. And I think, Mike, you want to make a comment about the paving or the coating?
Mike Lamphere. Yes, we have a bid in for doing the seal coating and the painting of the stripes and the crosswalks and things of that nature. I'd like to see what the engineering report has to say before I commit to that, in case there's something else that I have to do that would, negate the seal coating. Okay, so I'd like to find out, when the engineering study is going to be done. You mentioned 45 days or something of that nature, so that we can move ahead with this, because I'm ready to go ahead with the paving. We do have a line that is along the curb. There's painted lines, white lines along the curb. We're the only neighborhood in all of Pelican Reserve that has that white line. I just assume if it's not some sort of a requirement, I would just assume not to pave it so I don't have to maintain it anymore. But
And I concur with that. I went through the neighborhoods. There's no street has lines on the side except for theirs. I think WCI or Lenore must have had some extra paint.
I have no idea. We just had our carports in buildings in Plaza 1 and 2. We just had the carports redone, and we had the handicap stuff redone, all of that. That was just done yesterday. We finished it. So it looks good. We got a good company by the name of D&G that has given me, I have a couple. I got one from Atlantic Southern, which the CDD sent them out there to look at the thing with you. We were out there with them, Joe. They gave me a bid, and I looked at D&G. D&G, I think, is a little bit more competitive, and I was very happy with their services that they provided for us. So I'd like to go with D&G as soon as I find out what the engineering studies. Okay?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Thank you.
Anything more on that, Joe?
No.
Is there anything more that you need from me?
Let me know when you find out when the engineers are coming, because they did tell the CDD when the task authorization was put on the docket that it would be 45 days. So if you've contacted them somewhat within that time frame, but I would still push them for the 45 days, which means maybe within the next 30 days they should get it.
Proposal, and Plaza will pay
Yeah.
for the engineering study.
Yeah.
We have no problem with that.
But we depend on you two guys to make that move along.
We'll do that.
Okay.
All right. If there's anything you need from me, let me know.
I will.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we're on to bond certification and potential use of funds. Chris, that's your baby.
Sure. And that is just a standard letter that goes out every year to the bondholder that there was an inspection conducted and everything's in good repair and working order. And there is a balance in there in that bond account, and it hasn't been spent. We brought up last year about using it for flowway maintenance on the north end of Pelican. And I sent a couple letters to Lennar asking them if they were going to make any further claims on the bond so we could spend the money, and I got no response from them. So
That's good.
well, it's
You spent the money.
well, maybe, or Mr. Geppert might have some ideas on spending it in Old
Well, the only
Pelican.
thing I would throw out is the flow with the CDD issue. Money is available to buy Pelican.
Yeah.
I think we ran out of things to fix. We may want to give it to them.
I'm
You
fine.
guys.
I'm
Yeah, I'll bring it back. I'll send them another letter. Maybe they'll be a little more responsive this time.
But do you have to give them that?
Not a lot left.
No.
Millions of stuff.
What's roughly the amount?
I think it's about $57,000.
That's a fair
Is there
amount.
any legal requirement to send them another letter, or if we just take it, we got it?
Well,
Army?
so, yeah,
This is a legal requirement.
Could we use it on the construction road conversion?
probably not. That's a new section and a new, this was original development.
Can we put it in our capital reserves?
Well, we'll find out. First, we got to let them to release it. They may be sitting there waiting till they get out, see if there's anything they could spend it on. That's why.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you have to separate the reserves into two reserves, Old Pelican and New Pelican, to be able to do that? You might have to, but
That's illegal.
yeah, you might have to separate,
Okay.
but it don't matter.
Okay, Chris, do we need a formal motion on this?
Well, the board sends the letter and the board approved it. This is really for information services and just to bring it back in front of you to let you know there's still a small balance in a bond hanging out there.
Okay.
And if the bond's paid.
Well,
Okay. Next item is the boardwalk status report. A request and potential change order.
Well,
Chris, is that you or is that Scott?
well, It really doesn't matter. I put a status report and went over this with Scott. It was in front of you. This was just the pay request that was available. When you're putting your agenda together, you have a status report in front of you with a colored map that shows you what's been completed, how much money's been spent to date on the boardwalk. We've had about $5,400 in change orders on $1 million contract. They have some railing issues that the way to hang the rail wasn't included on the engineering plans, and that's probably going to cost a couple $1,000s more in a change order. And right now they seem to be proceeding according to the bid items they have. The only thing I can caution is when they pull those timbers up, if they find a rotten piling or something that the support needs to be changed, and they recommend, hey, change it while we're in here. And they've also found some areas where they use the original design plans the engineer did on the boardwalk. And as they're pulling those boards up, it wasn't built to the plan. So they're finding as found versus as built. So they're finding a few areas in there. It's like, hey, we need to reframe this little section. And at the moment, they are not looking at any substantial cost increases, but I get worried when I hear the engineer say when we're out there, well, you know, this is a remodel. And a lot of times with a remodel, it has a 20% contingency, not a 10% contingency like normal projects do. So again, so far we haven't seen anything, and everything is according to bid items, and they have quantities issued. So if there are additional cap and pile, there's a set price for it. But I'm keeping a wary eye on it.
Chris, I have a question on the engineering. We had this question about the decking and the, what do you call it? The cross
Parquet.
And now you just mentioned there's an issue with the how the rails are being hung. These were not covered in the engineering work that was done that we used for bidding processes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an error or an omission on the part of the engineers? And if so, do we have any recourse?
Well, I think on a $1 million contract, going errors and omissions over a few $1,000s on a handrail probably wouldn't be worth the time, and it's really the way the rail's hung. On the parquet, the contractor didn't have a huge issue with it. He just thought that stringers should be ran, additional ones, and just run the boards in one long length and eliminate the parquet. We stayed with the parquet because I think Pelican overall, it didn't involve any additional cost. I look at it a little more from a maintenance side when you have those long boards that are running in there versus boards running 45-degree angles where they're buttoned up with golf carts running over them. That tends to be a maintenance issue where those boards butt up. You know, they tend to want to come up there. But they've lasted a long time the way they are now. But errors and omissions and how far you can go with that, unless I saw something significant. And if they pull those planks up and there's a set of rows that run off one way different than what the plan showed, and they use the original plans, they did an evaluation based on those plans. They didn't go out and tear the whole thing apart.
I just get worried about that. I mean, I work with NASA and I work with the Atomic Energy Commission. There's an emissions, man, one dotted I that wasn't taken care of was an issue. And we paid dearly for all that. So I'm just, I saw these and I'm thinking how much, we had a problem right up front with that bid where they forgot to ask the people what the material was. That caused an issue right there. So I'm starting to see little things, not necessarily big, but I'm getting worried about this.
Joe, if I may,
I would say, yeah.
we had a meeting with the ponds work group, individual Al Slickers, the contractor, the engineer, the district, Scott, Tuesday morning of this week, specifically to talk about the parquet floor and whether we should move forward with it. I had conversation with the chairman, and because there's not a significant difference in cost or in engineering to do it the way it was, we decided, we gave him direction to continue with the parquet. specifically to your question about the pre-bid meeting, I got an unsatisfactory clarification of what occurred. And it was in the engineering jargon of the two items that were approached were comparable, whether it was a full inch thick or 3/4 inch thick. And that's why I allowed the bid process to go through. And I told him I still wasn't happy with that. That meeting was not a good meeting, but at any rate, it is a sound structure from an engineering point of view. But we did have a good review. Unbeknownst to me, we held that thing up about 3 weeks waiting for this. Contractors have been sitting around waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. So at least we got beyond that with Tuesday's meeting.
I think we would question using Foster Engineering again.
Well, that's kind of where I am, but I mean, I want to be fair to him too, but the bid meeting was not as smooth as it should have been. But anyway, it's moving forward now, and we should not incur any additional cost. And there was no penalty or no savings, whether we're in Parquet or the other one.
And a lot of that correspondence you get from me, anytime some of these issues come up, I want you to be aware of it. You know, and that's why it's kind of like, hey, this is out there. And a lot of times I wouldn't. I'd wait till there was created a real issue, but I'm just trying to keep you informed as it moves along. But it is pretty much on schedule and on budget.
Good.
So
Good.
And I've also asked Chris to notify me of any changes.
Yep.
As a member of the board.
Any other questions of Chris, turning the board off? Okay, we're on to maintenance of Pelican Reserve Conservation Area, vendor review and recommendations. Doug?
You okay if you stand up there? I just want to say Al did a great job on the RFP process, working with Al Slickers, the member of the Ponds Group. And if you want to tell me your recommendation, then I'm going to go through some of the cost differences with them after you're done.
Certainly. Thank you, L. Harris, Gateway Services. Yes, Al and I and Doug worked very closely to put this package together and get it out there. We had 6 people at the pre-bid meeting for this particular contract. We did have 4 bids submitted. If you want to go over the numbers, Doug, I'll let you do that.
Okay. We'll
have
try
it
to
right there.
summarize on the back sheet. Look, turn the sheet over on the back. If you look at that, the current contract that we had with them was $110,000 a year.
And who is them?
That was Woods and Wetlands was 110. They started with WCI. They were around there forever with this contract. Never went to bid. They came back in the bid process and bid 92. So they reduced their price from 110 to 92. You can look there towards the bottom. Aquagenics is 58, 410. And we use them for maintenance. They've been a very effective vendor contractor with us. And the fact that the low bid, Solitude, had no references in the bid package. There were some limitations of what they were able to supply. The recommendation of the group was to go with Aquagenics at $58,410. By the way, that's I think, what is that? 40. I'm trying to do the math in my head. $52,000 savings per year, which is not insignificant.
Yeah.
And that was a 3-year contract with no escalation across the year. I just want to say that the team worked together great. Chris, your team and our team worked together great. And they come up with a lot of savings and a good job. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I would like the board to recommend to the district, Gateway District, to go with Aquagenics. Yeah. I'd like a motion for the board to vote on accepting Aquagenics as the vendor for the board project.
Number on it, or do we just go with these numbers? I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I don't.
The contract is written and Tony was engaged with that. I mean,
Okay.
legal's been engaged
Okay.
through the process. So it's a standard Gateway.
I think we're probably okay.
Yeah, okay.
Andy and John, are you on there?
John, can you hear us? We're calling a vote on the Aquagenics contract.
I vote yes.
Okay.
Randy?
Randy votes yes.
Okay, thank you. So the vote is 7-0. We will recommend that to the,
Thank you, Al.
And thank you so much. We have prepared an agenda item to be presented to the Gateway Board of Supervisors at the next scheduled meeting.
Great.
Thank you all very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you,
We'll
Al.
talk soon, Joe.
And I know she appreciates your kind words. And if you're looking for a subject area expert, you don't have to look any further.
No, I do appreciate it, and that too as well, Chris. Thank you all so much. I try very hard to do a good job for you.
Thanks. Have a good day, Al.
okay, CDD report. Chris, do you have anything further that you want to report to us?
Well, just the budget, and you took care of your two items, and it was kind of logical if somebody took a look a little closer. And I'll have to say that that rec position was added last week, so it wasn't there to look at. And that number Tony had in there, it sat in there, and I think when it came up, they were looking at the construction road, was why they inflated it, but that really isn't coming out of your budget per se. You know, it's a separate line item project. I have to say that the board came in with a little, I termed it shock and awe to the residents with a 103% increase. They asked staff to come forward with everything, and it was all basically neglected maintenance. And as one board member liked to say, kicking the can down the road. They turned around and brought the assessment down to under 20% by taking about $1.6 million out of that increase and turning it into capital costs that they're going to finance over 20 years. That'll probably be about $70 in P&I. So we had some interesting discussions about what is maintenance, what is capital. And I guess in the end, the auditors and the banks will make that final decision, what they're going to loan for a 20-year term versus a 5. But the plan is on the short term, they'll take out a 5-year note while they go through the bond validation process, which is about a 6-month all the way through circuit court. Anytime a special district, Chapter 190 is going to borrow more than 5 years, it has to get validated. When they did that process for the Lake Bank program, their outside attorney bill was $45,000 plus an engineering report. I mean, we had almost $100,000 in administrative costs related to that effort. So how this is all going to play out, you know, lowering the assessment and moving maintenance costs into long-term debt, I'm not sure. I wasn't comfortable with it, but that's where they are right now. And the public hearing is next week, Thursday night. So I'm sure a lot of the residents will be happy that that assessment
There'll
went
be a
down.
lot of people there.
Well, I'm sure a lot, you know, that the assessment went down, but on the other side, you show the debt service, you know, going up. So you include that on your assessment, and we'll see. It's been interesting.
Are you suggesting there, and this is to cast back, that we could maybe do not need $25,000 in attorney fees in our budget?
I think if they're talking to Tony, I think, you know, if you took that down to 12, and we're putting that in the memo that we're going to put with the board, and I'm sure they'll make a half a dozen or a dozen adjustments while they're talking. This is make a motion, do them all, and that'll be the final budget that they'll adopt.
All right, thank you. Association manager report and Securitas. Scott?
Good afternoon, Scott Sharnoff, Pelican Preserve Property Manager. As far as Securitas, I do have the traffic report. I did pass that out to all of you. We are still holding in the mid 50,000 range as far as number of vehicles traveling through the main gate. With this being summer, that has spiked an increase by about 6,000 over prior year at the same time. So we're still seeing heavy usage and minimal amount of repairs being done on the gate arms, but you know, people do hit them, and they do start requiring more repair. So there has been some discussion about wanting to look at putting gates on the pedestrian areas. That's going to be a little bit more complex to do. Would require us to force all the golf carts onto the road because we put a gate there, the golf carts won't fit through that sidewalk area. And we would have to find a way to get the residents back into the community. The only way to do that without installing another system for the residents to use is to use the current fob with your ID card. For us to do that is going to be a sizable expense to transfer that technology to the gatehouse. So there are some hurdles for us to cross as we move forward in that discussion.
Are you saying you're going to do that?
No. As we move forward in that discussion. That has been brought up. So that's one item. The other items that are coming up, as we mentioned, we do have the Securitas contract out to bid. I'm working with Elle and the team over here at the CDD office. We are going to put the landscaping out to bid also. So we'll see how that comes back. Everybody has a different opinion of how we should landscape the area. So we have expectations and we have costs. And right now with our budget going to be approved before the bid process is completed, we're going to have to back in to those bids as they come in. So that's going to be a monster of a project. I went through all of the common grounds between the Master Association and the CDD with Elle. Joe was there. So everybody has a good idea of what we're looking at as far as the size of the contract and the scope of the contract. So if any of you want to know where we own land, let me know. I'll take you out in the field.
You want a jigsaw puzzle? You got one.
Yeah. So
May I ask who wants to explore putting a gate on the pedestrian area?
that came out of the Safety and Security Work Group,
Oh,
but
okay.
that's under discussion. But that's come up before, and it has come to this committee before, and we voted not to proceed because of all the moving parts involved. But it may circle back as far as a concern with the community and the security of the community.
It comes up periodically.
Yes.
We're going to lock off Prado.
Well, I figure we might as well be locked up tighter in Fort Knox.
I didn't hear that, but okay, something else. As far as what's going on.
With regard to the landscaping.
Yes.
I have made the decision, we need a PPAC agent. I don't know exactly what the title is. Well, but somebody to follow that contract and to be in on the bidding and things of that. And I've asked Joe to do that. He's the one who's very familiar with it. He's already been associated with it. So he will be our person on that.
Joe, will you keep the same group, the work group you had looking at that down the road there?
Well, just this happened, but yeah, I would certainly do that.
Because I mean, you
and
had
look
a
for
good
more.
group together.
Well, we have a good group together, and I've had a number of residents that would like to get involved and actually do some gardening in their own neighborhoods. So we need to sort that out. But I'm thrilled to have this opportunity. I will say I went with Scott and the CDD folks and Ameriscape, and I was in awe of their expertise and understanding of the community. I sure as hell didn't have an idea what we all were involved with. Pardon my French, but it was quite an exciting experience for me, and I'm thrilled to be able to do this. And I think it's time to do it also. We have a lot of issues that we'll be looking at in the future. But, yeah.
All right, an update of maintenance that's taken place. We have done our pine straw project. We do that in the CDD areas semi-annually. We've also started our palm tree trimming. And as I mentioned to the President's Council today, when individuals hit street lights, I'm a good 15 weeks out of getting it replaced after I get the insurance check back. So a couple of our streetlights were knocked down by motorists, and they were insurance claims.
Have we received the new 15-foot bar yet for the trap gate?
That's been ordered. That's going to be installed. And I've found a pot that we can put out there too. That wasn't too expensive. So when that's hit and broken, we're not into a lot of money there.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Scott?
Scott, do you have that quote from Ameriscape for those couple palm trees?
Yes, I do.
I may have a copy of it here.
One comment, probably, looking for that. CDD voted this past board meeting to purchase camera readers at the request of the Lee County Sheriff to monitor entrances and exits of Gateway itself. We asked them to include Pelican, the board agreed to us, and we'll be getting a couple. These are lifetime readers, so when they're looking for a Amber Alert or whatever they call it, senior citizen alert, or Roberts, stolen car, they'll have data from our community also.
Bob, could I expand upon that? The CDD had a presentation by a deputy sheriff about these readers, and they're going to install them on Gateway Boulevards. They can track cars, and they can follow who comes into the community, who leaves it. They can follow cars as they're passing through the community, and actually set up a strategic place to stop somebody if they're wanted or it's a stolen car. It's quite fascinating. Ed Tinkle, I'm not sure which community he lives in, Stony Brook, maybe? Gateway Greens. They're installing 4 of these at their entry gates. And the really beautiful thing is, and it might be something our Safety and Security Committee might want to consider, is they are real-time readers. They spot cars that are stolen. License plates might indicate there's a bad guy in or girl in the car. And that might be a much better security system than what our gate readers are doing now, because it'll tell the police immediately if this is somebody that we don't want to deal with in our community. And Ed, I think Ed said the cost for his community to put it in for 4 readers was somewhere about $17,000. Huh?
They didn't put it in. They just happened to use it.
Well, they happened to use it, but they were very pleased to find out what the results will be. It's much better than our system from what I've heard. I asked the sheriff to send me some information on it so we could maybe pass it on to the Safety Security Committee, but it looked
I'll bring you
really
copies
good.
of the proposals. We have them in there, and the difference is you don't have access to that data. That data is going real time to the sheriff's data center.
They're different systems.
They're different systems. I think we're collecting, we're collecting different data and they're different systems.
Completely different.
Completely different. It's just an information.
And their systems are real time, right? When they see a car come through, it's reading it right then, and then they can see it come in the community, come out. And when they've used that before is they have 35 plates that come into a subdivision. Well, those plates come in and out every day. All of a sudden, one plate came in and out the night of the burglaries. So the next night, that car came into the community and set the alert. They went off, got the guy. And they see somebody that has a warrant. Car goes in, parks. They just go, there's the car, wait for him, it comes out.
Now, if I go into Gateway at a certain time and I make it to the 7-Eleven earlier than I should, if I'm not speeding, are they gonna write me a speeding ticket?
You're pretty shady.
I think they can detect speeding with those cameras
I think they can too.
if they want to.
But there's issues with maintenance, and I even brought them up there, county roads, not CBD roads. And of course, the sheriff, I don't think he'd mind, but we're moving forward, and we'll bring it to you for vetting. But Bob had them included for Pelican, and typically you have one coming in and one coming out.
Let's move forward.
Joe, I'll need that proposal back because that's a signed one to get the project up and running.
Oh, okay.
So, but you wanted to take a look at it and bring it to the committee?
Yeah, a number of months ago, Scott made a proposal from Ameriscape to replace the dead palm trees at Prado Drive and at the circle. And we decided at that point to look harder at that whole Prado Drive landscaping. which we've done. And we're working on a proposal for what we'd like to see planted along that whole length of road. But it came to my attention that we had a $7,500 quote from Ameriscape to put some palms in that one section. And the group that I have assembled, which is two of the CDD people and a horticulturist and a former nursery owner at Pelican, took a look at that, and we went back to Ameriscape and said, rather than 7,500 and what you're planning, we made a different proposal to them to look at. And since it's in the ongoing budget, the money was there. They've come back and they've cut the quote down to $5,700.46 for completely different types of trees, which the experts, and they're the guys that know what they're doing, are recommending to us. And my thought process is, since we do have that fund, we can do something and at least show the people in Prado that we're working on that island, and we'll continue to do so. But this would give them a start and certainly enhance the beauty of that one particular area. So I'd recommend that we accept this. Everybody else that I've talked to on my group has said, yeah, this is what we wanted from the beginning. So I recommend that we move forward with it.
It's in the budget, you say?
It's in the budget, yes. It's a budgeted
Or
item,
it's budget.
but it's $2,000 less than
Yes.
what the original quote was.
We have 17,000 left in the operating budget for plant material replacement. And what is that, 53?
5,700.
Yeah, this is 5750.
Yeah, 5750. So
Just
it's there.
curious, what kind of trees instead of palm trees?
Well, we've got we got palm trees. We've got Montgomery palm trees that will replace the royal palms. We have a King Alexander palm, and we'll be taking some of the crepe myrtles out. We're going to put some buttonwood trees in, Japanese ferns, and a Vera wood tree, and we'll do the landscaping. And I can't tell you what all those trees are because
Neither can I.
I'm not the horticulturist. But the
But this is for
horticulturist.
more area than just where those
This
two
will be,
palms were?
well, actually, it'll be a little bit more than where those palm trees were. It'll be maybe 40, 50 feet from the beginning of that island going towards into Prado.
Oh,
And then the rest of it we'll do on a major project that we're working on right now, where we'll be defining what trees we want put in and which ones we want taken out.
Mhm.
And that'll be a separate bid process. But this will get something started. It'll be there by the time the seasonal people start coming back, and it should somewhat look mature at that point also.
So do you want to make
That
a
sounds
motion to
good.
do it?
So yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept this bid from Ameriscape for $57.46.
Do you want to make it a not to exceed number?
Yeah, okay. I'll make a motion that we move forward with the bid for planning at that section of Prado Drive, not to exceed $6,300.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions of Joe or Scott on this? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We got John. Randy, did we get you?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Passes 7-0. We don't have to go back to the board with that. It's in our budget. Okay, Scott, anything further?
No, unless there's other questions.
Any questions of Scott?
Any questions about golf carts?
No, I sent our stuff to Scott, to Tony, after our last meeting, and I neglected to follow up with him, but I haven't heard anything from him, so
Okay.
I'll send him another email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Scott. Hans Work Group, Doug?
As always, I have a list here of about 7 items. I won't cover them all. Just do a highlight on a few of them because you can read them. We've already covered the conservation area RFP, which is one on the list. The top on the list, I just want to say, we've had a lot of problems with aeration. I'm not pleased with where we're at right now with aeration. We had the fires, then we had the engineering of the redoing electricity with the GFCI breakers. Actually, we have five of the ponds that are tripping the circuit breakers right now. So we're trying to figure out if the compressors are bad. So I'm not pleased with that because the ponds keeps turning off. And then the other thing that slowed down some of the work in this area is the firm that we use had a major COVID outbreak, and they were out for 10 days. But right now, I'm not pleased, and I'm the head of the ponds group. That's my responsibility. I'm not pleased with where we're at with aeration. We got to look at either changing the course we're on or do something different. So that's with that. We're looking at putting an adjustable weir in Pond 38. That's where Viadana had a couple units flooded at Irma. And what we'll be able to do by doing that is be able to lower the level of the ponds, the level on the ponds, Pond 38 before a major storm, week before, lower the weir so more of the water flows out to the flowway. We got Southwest Water Management engaged. We got Tetra Tech engaged, and Mike Causey is now the head of that. He came to complain about the weir, and I brought him into the ponds group, and now he's got responsibility to do it. So the budget, I think, is around 50K to do this project, and it's in the current. Well, I'll come forward to the board once we get a proposal, but the 50K will be in the current budget. It's not incremental money that will be spent.
Doug, I have one suggestion. I worked an awful lot in the water management industry, and there's a thing called an AWWA nut, American Water Works Association. You should make sure the hand wheel on this has an AWW nut, because you can then turn that with an electric drill.
I will have Mike get with you, okay?
Okay.
And the only other thing is our trouble ticket system, which is similar to Ameriscape, is completed now. Within the ponds group, we have a trouble ticket system to track that with our vendors. And Peggy Hall is the one that led that effort, and she will demo it on August 19th to the user, our ponds group. She will do that at our meeting on the 19th. So that's what I have. There's other things on the list, but I covered the top three. Thank you.
Any other questions of Doug? Okay, Safety and Security Work Group. We've already started looking at the possibility of what the Safety and Security Work Group can do, take over to save us some money. Look a little bit more like the Ponds Work Group, although there's not as much work to be done. We have canceled the police patrols for the summer. I think I may have mentioned that the last time. We decided they're not very effective, and whether we'll even start them up again is open to question. We have difficulty getting the police to write tickets, and if they don't write tickets, it doesn't seem to do us a lot of good as far as control is concerned. So
I did have a question about that, though. If we would decide to hire them back, is that money in the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
But we've got to work with them to make sure that they're going to do something that we want them to do to make it more effective. So we do have this 2 cameras that we're moving around to track traffic flows, how fast cars are going, that kind of thing. We've just really started the program. We're moving them from place to place in various communities. It will give us information we may need to perhaps put in traffic calming devices, that is, things like rumble strips in certain places. Although the initial information from the cameras indicates that there's not a great deal of speeding. It's even despite the fact that people seem to think that there is, the cameras don't indicate that there is. But we will get back to you with what the information we get from the cameras is.
Is there a way we can position that to see if drivers are running stop signs?
That we've looked at that one, and and I'm with you on that. That's probably more of a problem is people running stop signs. So it would be good if we could get the police in here and get them to give out tickets for doing that kind of thing. We are still planning. You'll notice that we removed the traffic cones on Veneto.
Yeah.
Because they look kind of tacky, and we thought that the cars are no longer switching lanes as much as they were before, although we're going to keep an eye on that. We are going to put in rumble strips on the two areas that they're not in. Eventually, we're going to do that, so that will stop anybody that wants to switch lanes. We're going to be looking at painting some of the lines on the roads. Some of them are getting a little bit hard to see, fading away, and so that's, we're looking at that. And we have, the Safety and Security Work Group has a list of about 25 items that we're looking at for various safety issues. So that's it for Safety and Security Work Group.
Phil,
Are you the chair now, Phil, or is Ron?
No, it's Dean Groves is Dean Groves is the chair. Yep. I'm just the liaison to the feedback.
Phil,
yeah,
in the new groups now, now we got this security group that manage some of the stuff, and now you got Joe over there. Are you envisioning to operate like the Ponds Group, where they will have the budget to be and be able and responsible to maintain that?
That's the starting, looking at it, yes.
Okay, because I was going to say the other thing is part of it, and I almost don't want to bring it up because I wouldn't want stuff to change from the way it's working now for the Ponds Group, but there's certain authority that I would say that I have, that like what he just did with the palm trees, he would not have to come through us to get approval to do that if it was less than 10K. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's some, if he's on his budget and it's less than 10K, I mean, we could talk about that maybe as you go forward. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that would of course not, I mean, that's an example, but it would not include things like the palm trees. It would not be safety and security.
No, it'd be the group that Joe, that you would just told him to leave.
Yes.
That's what I meant, in the future. That's what I'm saying.
Yep, that's what we're looking at. Any other questions?
yeah,
Joe?
Phil, yeah, we've had, to my knowledge, 3 incidents of drunk drivers at the intersection of Cypress Grove Boulevard and Pelican Preserve Boulevard. One guy drove into the pond, but I've had 2 incidents reported to me about people in the, somewhere around 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, driving down Cypress Grove Boulevard, heading east in the westbound lanes. And cars have had to, yeah, my neighbor was one of them, and he speaks with an accent, and he was so excited about it. I said, hang up, I'm coming to your house so we can sit down and talk, because I want to understand exactly what he was telling me. He was a nervous wreck. He thought he was going to get killed, and he wasn't sure which lane to go in because the guy was weaving. And he finally made a decision, I'm going to hang to the right while the guy was coming down the left lane. But I've heard of that twice now in the last few months, maybe 3 months at the most, plus the guy driving into the pond. I don't know if the Safety Security Commission should look at doing something different at that intersection. A blinking light, or there is no real street light there. The street light's off on the side. So I don't know how they're missing. They're making left-hand turns before they get to the right side of the road to go down. I'm just bringing that up because I think 3 times in 3 months is a pretty high incident. And one other suggestion, I'm not sure, people keep saying it's golfers, and I won't believe it's golfers until there would be proof of that. It could be people coming from the club. It could be people coming from destinations. It could be golfers that are going out there with 3 6-packs in the back and spending half an evening. I don't want to put blame on anybody because there's no substantial evidence to that. But I think it would behoove us to make sure that the people that are working as bartenders at the club and at destinations understand the rules of serving people. And I believe there might be some statutes. If you overserve someone and there is an accident, perhaps the establishment that was doing the serving could be held accountable. I don't know what the legality of that is, but perhaps somebody should put a little bug in someone's ear and say, don't overserve people.
I'm going to ask Gary to comment on that. First, how they handle these kinds of things.
Pretty typical subject at clubs and communities, but what should be happening, and that'd be something ICON's responsible for, is that the bartenders go through training and how to serve and how to recognize somebody in the bar that's intoxicated or been served too much. The hard part is to be able to go to an owner and say, I've got to cut you off. And that's got to be, you got to know how to do that. So I will check with Icon, but I know they have, I've been on some of their training courses online that they do that for employees. It's just how many of ours are participating.
Yeah, Gary, I agree with you. It's a training issue, and I know it's
Yeah.
very delicate to try to tell somebody, particularly if they've been drinking a lot, we're cutting you off. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the guy doing that.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
yeah,
they had a problem at Flip Flops. The guy went berserk, one of the residents, because the bartender cut him off.
Well, yeah, and then you just got to be able to have a rule, a conduct rule that the employee lets a manager know and take care of it that way, so it doesn't happen again. So it is,
maybe that's something in the covenants.
what's that? Well, it'd be in the rules and regulations
Yeah,
of the club, that document.
thanks. Well, I appreciate that, Gary.
Are we
Thank you.
willing, like Shell Point, to go non-alcoholic?
No,
No.
Who said no?
Me,
I think we all did.
I'll have everybody at my house.
She'll go non-alcoholic as long as she can have a colored golf cart.
Joe, I would add one thing to that, which was another piece of what you were talking about, is that we have looked at the couple of times, and it's still on our list, the lighting at the corner of Cypress Grove and Pelican Reserve Boulevard. You know, we did put, I guess we painted the part of the nose of the island there
With reflective paint.
with reflective paint.
Reflectors.
Yeah.
And you do have the residents there that their lanais with the more lighting would be impede on there. We talked about
Yeah,
that too. It's a touchy area.
I don't disagree. I just think it's something we should be, keep aware of. And 3 incidents is, if somebody had gotten hurt, we'd have a much bigger issue.
But the blinking light's not going to solve the problem of a drunk driver.
No, he's not gonna.
Not really.
Either is more like.
Right. Just a cop light in your window, right? That's the only thing.
Put an exit gate there so people.
Okay. Anything more? Any other questions on safety and security? Okay, CDD meeting attendance schedule. Glenn, you're up for the next one.
I told him I would go because El's going to present at the meeting, the conservation thing. So I figured I should be at least.
Okay. Doug will go with that one. Now we
That's
have,
on the 19th you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
then the following ones will be, I don't,
September 2nd,
September 2nd.
I'll do that.
Okay. Okay. And September 16th.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
The 16th?
16th of September.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Glenn. Next meeting date is September 9th. Are there any comments by, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I just had a question. At what meeting will the CDD be voting their set budget?
That will be at 6:00 PM on the 19th. Regular,
This coming Thursday, okay.
regular meeting at 3, and then at 6:00 we'll start the budget.
The next meeting date on here, I guess, is, yeah, okay, right, September 9th.
I have a couple of comments.
Yes. This is the
One,
time.
Glenn, I understand the golf course is in the process of being sold. Anybody have information on
I've
it?
heard those rumors.
No, I mean that there's a tentative bid on the golf course.
Gary, you want to speak to that?
Heritage Golf Group is a company that has, I believe, 10 clubs right now. They have investors. That's where they get their money. They come in and operate, manage the course. And they've been doing due diligence on the course. So I would say they're probably the leading group that's looking at buying it. But there's a lot of deferred maintenance on the golf course. So I'm sure that's going to come into the negotiations. And that'll usually be toward the end. So I don't think they've done that yet, but there's quite a list of things that have been deferred on that golf course.
So suffice to say, it's not a done deal.
Not a done deal yet, no, but I know Lennar doesn't want to be in the golf business either.
And do we know, does it still involve 2 courses?
That's what I've heard. I met their director of agronomy that was touring the golf course with Jim, so he seemed to be talking positively about it. But, you know, I know Lennar is pretty firm on the price. But, I mean, you're talking a few $1 million to get it back to where it needs to be. Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the reasons, one of the things that why we weren't interested. Because we wanted a high price and still had a lot of different things.
My second issue is, I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that the new community on Tree Line is proposing running their storm sewers across to us at Pelican Preserve.
Mr. Gephardt.
Bob Gephardt, and I will answer that. It is not a proposal. It has been part of the plan since day one. It's been part of the plan before Pelican was even built. They are asking us to provide maintenance to it. In other words, clean it because they're all dirty. And we've said, no, we don't really care if the water comes or not. So it's up to them. So that's where we stand today. That's as of this morning.
And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it goes into it just goes through one of our ponds right into the
then
flowway.
it comes
It's
into the
just a
pond along Aviano and goes directly back out
out of the
of the
flowway.
twin 84s. Probably never should have been designed that way, but that's neither here nor there. That's the way it was designed, permitted, and approved by South Florida.
So we won't have to absorb any costs.
We have no cost, no nothing.
They have to clean
We
it.
just watch the water go by.
Very good.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other?
Well, they're all dirty right now. They're at least 40%. We won't get much water at all unless they clean them, and we refuse to clean them.
I have one question. I had a neighbor called up the other day who lives on the flowway in Carina, and he was concerned about vegetation growing in the flowway and who would be responsible to clean it. And he's asking because it's getting to be overgrown in his opinion. And also he can't throw his fishing line in.
You could send a request to customer care at Gateway, and they could do it, or they could call L. Typically what happens is if you send something to customer care that gets dispatched to the staff member, they'll probably address it on their monthly maintenance. But the way our contract, we don't really knee-jerk react like you guys do in Pelican. We don't have that level of service.
fishing. That's not allowed.
Tell them Flowway belongs to CDD.
Yeah, that's what I tell them.
I know that, but you're allowed to fish
Not the
there, aren't you?
pond.
You're not allowed to fish in this flowway?
Actually, by permit, there's no recreation or aesthetic use of those ponds. So boats, no swimming, no, the guy has his little motorized sailboats he's using over there now. And it's like, really?
I didn't see that, hear that, or know that.
They're stormwater ponds. They
Yeah,
aren't
well,
for aesthetic.
I know there's stormwater ponds, but the flowway is a non-fishing. That's interesting.
Okay, Teresa, you have any comments you want to make?
I do not.
Okay, Doug?
No.
Any further? Glenn,
Joe,
you've
they'll
made
probably
yours.
spread.
Joe? John? Any comments for the group?
My one comment had to do with the maintenance agreement that Tony does normally with, Tony and I do. I think I just said, Tony is not just, if there's any changes to a maintenance agreement, we are just doing an addendum, which really cuts down on Tony's time. I know the discussion before regarding how much his costs are, but in regards to the maintenance agreement, it's probably only about 20 minutes now because he just does a very quick addendum. So we are not contributing to Tony's time doing that.
How frequently do you have to do this addendum?
I mean, we've been looking at it normally every 2 years, and we did it this year. And I think it's like a 1-paragraph addendum.
The third time since 7.
And John, if I can add on that too, one thing I think is missing from that maintenance agreement is the landscaping and irrigation and lighting on Tree Line. that Pelican takes care of.
No, that's in the
Agreement?
exhibit B.
And the exhibit, okay.
Yeah, I mean, and that gets changed just with Scott and I.
Okay.
So no, the exhibits are up to date as well.
Okay.
Without anything from Tony. If you have a question regarding that, let me know, regarding, the lighting or something like that. But look at the exhibit B.
Sure.
Of course, if a lawyer spends 20 minutes, they'll charge you for 30. Every
All right, that's all I have.
$150 an hour. That's only $75 for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You could pay it out of your.
John, any other comments?
No, I am fine. I'm
Randy?
ready to get, it's close to cocktail time.
Randy, any comments from you? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. A motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second.
Unanimous. The meeting is adjourned at 3:51.